up, y'alls? ZF Snake here. And of the many things in our lives that are constantly in disorder, the Venom of Society would like to talk about a particular disorder known the world over as insomnia. Insomnia is the single most common sleep disorder affecting roughly half of the entire world's population, with more than 3 million cases occurring in the US alone, yours truly being one of them. The inability to sleep can be brought on by a variety of different factors, such as pain or stress, be it physical, mental, or emotional, as well as traveling a lot, being sick, having allergies, or having other sleep disorders such as sleep apnea or restless leg syndrome. Are there any other causes?
Obviously not to your knowledge.
In other words, no, that's all of them?
Correct. And also, your dietary habits are beyond comparison to what any certified health coach could advise.
Just say what you mean, dipshit. Those who suffer from insomnia have a multitude of different treatment options. Some opt for over-the-counter or prescription sleep aids, while others may take a more natural approach with things like yoga or meditation. Hell, a lot of people these days come right here to YouTube to try out some of that newfangled ASMR. Hey, pleased to meet you. My name is CF, but you can just call me Snake. Your regular hairdresser had a very unfortunate accident, but that's okay. I'm here to take care of you. You have such beautiful hair. I am so glad that I get to work on it. You look nervous. Relax. Sit back. Close your eyes. Relax. 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 But I ain't here to be no public health advisor. I'm here to tell y'all why insomnia is awesome. Tell me something, y'alls. When you sleep, how often do you dream about everything in your life being perfect? How often do you dream about having that loving, caring, beautiful girl in your life? Or having all of these close, loyal friends around you? Or working your dream job? Or just being happy in general? Only to wake up and realize that you're still single, you're still a complete loner, you still hate your job, and you're still as miserable as ever. Well, that's because when you go to sleep, you're leaving your brain to its own devices. And if you ain't figured it out by now, your brain is a dick. But when you crawl up out of that bed, you ain't gonna go out there and try to change anything, because while you were sleeping, your brain was also doing this shit called memory consolidation, where it enhances and integrates all your shitty memories right into your prefrontal lobe. And what that means is that it was making sure that throughout this entire day, you were going to remember all of the times when you wanted to go talk to that hot girl, but all you did was creep her out, or when you wanted to go hang out with those guys up the block, but all you did was annoy them, or when you went to go apply for that job, but all you got was escorted off the premises, or when you wanted to be happy, but all you got was the cops call on you. But when you don't go to sleep, your brain doesn't get to do what it wants to you. Instead, it's got to keep all its synapses firing so that it can do what you want. And in order to do that, it's gonna have to take that prefrontal lobe, that part of you that would otherwise be telling you that the only way to win at the game of life is not to play, and it's gonna pump it up with dopamine, that pleasure chemical, that feel-good hormone, that neurotransmitter that promotes confidence, awareness, motivation, and cero miedo. And as you feel that euphoric rush overtaking your faculties, you get out there, you live your life. And regardless of who you're gonna annoy, or creep out, or put off in the process, you show society what you are all about. To put it just a little bit more concisely, when the mind is deprived of all of its peace, all of its comfort, and all of its stability, it comes alive. But there's one more positive aspect that comes to mind about insomnia as well, and that's the satisfaction in knowing that it would theoretically make me pretty much completely invulnerable to a certain cornerstone of the horror genre. A certain iconic killer who preys upon this basic human need that his victims have to voluntarily lie down and become unconscious by way of eviscerating them from deep within their dreams. And who am I talking about? Hit the music. Created by the late great Wes Craven and portrayed most famously by Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger first hit the horror scene in 1984 and has since left a legacy that will never be laid to rest. He is in every possible way the stuff that nightmares are made. And tonight, the Snake Den Horror Show brings to you a worst to best countdown of all 9 films in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Quick disclaimer before we start though. I've been looking at the way a lot of y'alls here in the horror community have been ranking up this franchise on your websites, on your blogs, and on your channels, and I'm just gonna tell you right now, y'alls are going to find my opinion very biased and very subjective, and if you ain't down with that, then I got 2 words for you.
Dude.
What?
Everybody's opinion is subjective and biased. That's kind of what having an opinion entails.
That's what you think, Merriam Jackass Webster. Now what say we show the fine folks what we mean? The number 9 worst film of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Yeah! If there is one thing that compares to the euphoria of a sleep-deprived mind coming alive, it is taking a video and driving it head first right into the dislikes frying pan. That's right, sitting at the bottom of the barrel of this countdown is the film that even Robert Freddy Krueger England himself considers his favorite. This film bears the distinction of being set in real life, with the actors performing not as characters, but rather their real life personalities. Except for Heather Langenkamp, who is somehow an A-list celebrity, getting chauffeured around in limos and appearing on talk shows, all for having appeared in all of 2 movies. But what really makes this installment a joke is the killer, who is not actually Freddy Krueger, but rather a demonic entity who's taken his form. You see, throughout the progression of this franchise, there's been a demon dwelling within it, and this demon's been getting really attached to the character of Freddy Krueger, getting to know it inside and out. And Heather, on account of being the first person for Freddy to deal with in the franchise, has become the gatekeeper into the real world. And now that the franchise has ended, the only thing left for this demon to do is to take out the gatekeeper. And once that happens, this force of evil will be free to impose its will on the entire world for the rest of eternity. Demonic spirits are not stupid. They're master manipulators. If one were to manifest itself into our reality as an otherwise fictional character, it wouldn't be a horror movie killer who everyone would be turning tail and running from at the first sight of. It'd be as one of them superheroes that all the ignorant boneheads would be bowing the fuck down to at the first sight of. Show me a movie where any of these people cross into our world, use their superpowers to purify society of its every misfortune, bask in the reverence of all of the true believers, and then rip their spandex off, reveal themselves to be the indomitable forces of evil, stare down at all of their loyal bonehead followers as they look back up at them in utter disillusion at who their lifelong heroes have really been all this time, and then send the whole damn world spiraling into the black abyss. And I'll show you a movie that's got its fucking back straight. Wes Craven would go on to perfect this concept of meta-horror with the 1996 release of Scream, as well as its subsequent sequels. But whereas many of y'all may see New Nightmare as a precursor to that, all I see is a cat and mouse game between a second-rate demon and a no-name actress's pain-in-the-ass kid. Number 8. A Nightmare on Elm Street, the 2010 remake. What, did you think I was gonna rate this clusterfuck at number 1? What kind of nutcase do you take me as? The 2010 reboot was directed by Samuel Bayer. Those of y'all who came up in the post-grunge era should be more than familiar with his resume of directing the legendary music videos to all the defining anthems of the genre, such as Smells Like Teen Spirit, Bullet with Butterfly Wings, Zombie, Boulevard of Broken Dreams, and many others. I feel good when things are going wrong. I only listen to the sad songs. I'm only happy when it rains. As it turns out though, being awesome at directing a band to gather around a set and lip sync their music does not yield the wherewithal to direct a movie that's intended to revive a legendary horror figure for a new generation. As a matter of fact, The way a music video is filmed is exactly how this disgrace should be viewed, with sound off and music blasting so as to be spared the twisted amendment made to Freddy's origin, as well as his lifeless wooden monotone that makes everything he says sound like it's being read off the bottom of a Snapple cap.
Did you know that after the heart stops beating, the brain keeps functioning for well over 7 minutes? We got 6 more minutes to play.
Number 7. A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child.
Throughout the character's existence, Freddy Krueger has been subjected to a lot of whacked out cockamamie rule changes in regards to the various methods in which it's possible to take him down. These methods have involved renouncing one's belief in him, going to his grave to burn his living skeleton, and inciting a rebellion inside of his body. But it's only in the 5th installment that the inconsistency becomes asinine, even by my standards. The movie follows the sole survivor of the previous film, Alice, who graduates high school and, like every popular high school girl, immediately gets knocked up. Well, come to find out, fetuses spend most of their womb time in a dream state, which gives Freddy an idea about how he can break this annoying dream world barrier that he's always having to work through. His course of action is to take out all of Alice's besties and feed their souls to her unborn child, thereby effectively creating his own demon seed. And if this were the only pregnancy we had to worry about in this movie, then it would make for a pretty sick plot. But of course it isn't, and it's with that we are force-fed all kinds of details about Freddy's mommy that nobody gave 2 shits about. You see, this nefarious plan that Freddy has for the birth of Alice's child is vaguely similar to the circumstances of his own conception, which was when Amanda Krueger was trapped for 4 days in an insane asylum and gang raped by 100 of its inmates. And apparently her egg got fertilized by all of those 100 lunatics at the same time, or some shit like that, who the fuck knows. Fast forward years later, where Freddy is put on trial for the string of child murders, but gets let off the hook on a technicality, which destroys Amanda's faith in humanity to the point where she's driven to suicide, hence the tombstone that we often see at the Springwood Cemetery. Except she ain't actually buried there because her body was never found because she didn't really kill herself, Freddy did, and he locked her spirit away into the now abandoned insane asylum, which is where Alice must lure Freddy to so that the spirit of Freddy's mommy can help her defeat him, because Freddy's mommy's spirit is so unstoppably powerful that it can do this. Moral of the story, don't be a rapist, don't be a bonehead, and don't have bastard kids.
Number 6. A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge.
Though the last film may have been the biggest head spinner, this film is by and large the biggest non sequitur. After the success of the first film saved New Line Cinema's ass from certain death, it was only logical that a sequel would be soon to follow. The only problem with that is that Wes Craven had never originally intended for this creation of his to be a multi-film franchise. That, along with the fact that A Nightmare on Elm Street was no longer Craven's intellectual property, meant that the only incentive that Wes Craven had to have anything to do with a sequel was if the number between the $sign and the decimal was to his liking. But not being one to buckle under anyone's demands except for Robert Englund's, the president of New Line took one look at Wes Craven's asking price and was all like, "Think this whole thing's gonna live and die by your involvement, you arrogant prick?" Well, Paramount's moving that hockey mask killer story along just fine without his original creators, which means we're gonna make this dream killer even more successful without you! Where's my distribution people at? You tired of driving around to theaters and doing those stupid screenings yet? You think it's about time you were in charge of writing scripts and making the real magic happen? That wasn't a question, jackass. Put the film reels down and get writing.
I just thought that it would be fun for Freddy to have a human avatar that's actually doing stuff in the real world. That was where I took off from, Possession.
And you directed that one movie for us before, right? What was it, Alone in the Dark? Hey, is it any good? Did anybody see it? Did we make any money off of that? It doesn't matter. Grab your clapboard and have a seat in that chair. Great job editing the trailers, by the way.
I was never a huge fan of the original. I mean, I understood why it was good and I understood why it was successful, but I felt no compunction to follow the template of the first film.
As a result, what we get from the very first sequel is Freddy Krueger in a lame B-movie reproduction of The Exorcist, where the dream world aspect is severely downplayed, the vendetta against Elm Street is cast aside in favor of a house, and the only thing worth remembering about any of it is that it is extremely, tremendously, and apparently unintentionally fruity.
Hey, what are you doing? Something is trying to get inside my body.
Yeah, and she's female and she's waiting for you in the cabana. And you want to sleep with me.
I simply did not have the self-awareness to realize that any of this might be interpreted as gay.
Number 5. A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master.
So now that we've picked through all the garbage, let's talk about what makes this franchise the horror film phenomenon that it is. The fourth film represented a turning point in which Freddy Krueger became a mainstream icon when it achieved a level of box office success that the franchise would not top until 2003. And with the sheer amount of 80s pop cultural glamour, the symbolism could not be any clearer. Though I gotta say, I'm kinda surprised that nobody seems to have recognized the most obvious homage, which is the lead protagonist, a child-free Alice, gaining a new ability from each one of her co-stars that dropped dead. Does that not remind you of anything that came out in the 80s? Because it should. Although it ultimately fails to live up to all the ballyhoo, it still manages to do Freddy justice by not only laying waste to the cast in rapid and inventive succession, but also by incorporating a new aspect of lucid dreaming, and a riveting one in my book, the false awakening loop.
Here we are. Come on, we have to hurry. What's going on? I'm driving. Come on, we have to hurry. I'm driving.
see, horror community, we ain't so different. Y'alls and me, we mesh just fine.
Number 4. Freddy's Dead, the Final Nightmare.
Did I speak a little too soon there? Oops! My bad! The valedictory of the Nightmare on Elm Street canon kicks off with Freddy toying around with a nameless teenager, resulting in an accident that renders him an amnesiac. The teen is then brought to a shelter for troubled youth, where a counselor named Maggie takes him out on a little tour of Springwood in an effort to restore his lost memory, while simultaneously enumerating to the viewer every detail about Freddy Krueger's past that had not yet been divulged. We also follow a trio of the youth center's troublemakers whose collaborative efforts to make a clean getaway ain't quite going as planned.
Give me the map. Carlos! I asked you for the map.
Yeah, well, the map says we're fucked.
But where were they going without ever knowing the way? The 6th film of the franchise gets universally blasted by horror fans around the world on account of being way too humorous and whimsical in contrast to the menacing aura that Freddy once had. So much so, in fact, that there are those out there who refuse to even call it a horror film. And I totally get where everybody who shits on Freddy's Dead are coming from. But what y'all's fail to realize is that this movie is a product of its time. By the time Freddy's Dead came out in the early 90s, there wasn't a person on the planet who was afraid of Freddy anymore. He was past his prime like Goldberg in Saudi Arabia. We may live in a decade now that's so devoid of originality that the only thing we have to entertain ourselves with is nostalgia for days gone by and whatever stupid shit's currently trending on social media. But the 90s were a time of transformation, and all the horror movie maniacs and all the superstars of the 80s were yesterday's news. But how, in your sick, twisted, messed up head, does that justify this blatant mockery of our beloved Freddy as a proper send-off for him, you might ask? Well, to that, I respond in the wise words of a great man's plastic surgeon. If you gotta go, go with a smile. What? I didn't hear that. Let me check my audio settings real quick.
Oh, I'm playing with power.
Pin count my ass, bonehead. There ain't nothing wrong with my connection. You're just a noob.
Number 3. A Nightmare on Elm Street, the 1984 original.
As we near the top of our countdown, we go from where the nightmare ended back to where it all began, with the inaugural tale of sweet, innocent Nancy Thompson and the demonic child killer, Frederick Charles Krueger. As we touched on previously, the first outing of Freddy Krueger was the literal lifeline of New Line Cinema, who back then was an independent studio and as such was having to beg, borrow, and steal every red cent that went into the production and post-production of their breakout release. But aside from rescuing a film studio from oblivion, it also prolonged the lifespan of the slasher genre, which by this time had become greatly oversaturated with endless run-of-the-mill titles starring a violent psychopath and his weapon of choice. Not that having too many bloodthirsty lunatics on the loose ain't a delightful problem to have. But when overexposure leads to desensitization, it calls for a little reorientation to the formula, and that would come from a stroke of genius on the part of the Sultan of Slash. After Craven spent a night watching infomercials while getting scratched by his nipped up cat and playing with his food, and combined it with some repressed childhood memories of the school bully and the town drunk, along with just a little touch of real life news stories about some South Asian refugees dying in their sleep, the legend was born, and it was up to New Line to bring it to life. As for the movie itself, what the fuck do you want me to say? It stood the test of time for well over 30 years and has a genre-defining moment in damn near every scene. No, that was just the first girl I met on Plenty of Fish. Y'all want to hear about the one I hooked up with last week? What do you mean you can't write me a pass to the boiler room? It's the only place I can study worth a damn. Is the plumber here? Have you slashed his tires? Bring him in. But why is the rum gone? Oh wait, never mind. I found it.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Don't listen to her. She doesn't understand your needs like I do. What's the matter? Are you looking for these? Sit the fuck down, you stubborn jackass, you. And sleep.
Number 2. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors.
If you spend any length of time at all on review sites, then it's no question that you have seen people bitch and moan about the dumbest crap imaginable. And one common gripe that stands out to me as being among the most moronic is when people complain about horror films not taking the time to develop their secondary characters, aka the murder victims, or put any effort into making them likable. You wanna know why they don't waste time trying to make you care about the people who are gonna get killed? Because they're gonna get killed. The name of the game is to see people who you either don't give a damn about or absolutely hate, and then watch in suspense to see how they get it. So if you want to make emotional connections with bonehead characters, then go watch one of your little love stories between Peter Pissed His Pants Parker and Mary Jane Rotten Crotch. That being said, every general rule has exceptions, and the exceptions in this case are the Dream Warriors. The third film takes place in the happy home with trees and flowers and chirping birds and where life is beautiful all the time. The psychiatric hospital, Weston Hills Asylum. And naturally, this place has them all. Drug addicts, sleepwalkers, socially awkward mutes, violent types, suicidal types, even crippled, nerdy suicidal types, because why the fuck not? But as many fun things as this place may be, one thing that it ain't is a safe haven. On top of all that, we also see the return of Nancy Thompson, who is now a graduate student in the field of dream research and has been assigned to Weston Hills as an intern. And it's through her assistance in group therapy that the inmates find out that they might just have the tools necessary to run the Dream World Asylum.
All of you have this inner strength. Some special power that you've had in your most wonderful dreams. Together, we can learn to use that power if we try.
I want you all to follow this pendulum with your eyes. Keep following the pendulum. You find yourselves getting tired. I'm going to count backwards from 5. When I finish, you will all be asleep.
Works like a charm.
In my dreams, I'm beautiful and bad.
Allow me just to reiterate, the good guys in horror films should be cannon fodder and nothing more, but a kinship among mental patients to present the very object of their diagnoses with a worthy challenge is something that even the Venom of Society has to respect.
It's a chair for you, kid!
I am the Wizard Master! Yo, Freddy! Where you hiding at, you burnt-faced pussy? Kruger! Pussy!
And besides that, the ones who make it out alive all die in the next film anyway, so it's a win-win all around. And speaking of Freddy Krueger having a worthy challenge,
The #1 best film of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is...
The year is 2003. Over a decade has passed since the demise of Freddy Krueger. Springwood has long since moved on and can finally, in every sense of the term, sleep peacefully. So, what exactly is to stop Freddy from rising up out the underworld and reminding everybody who put Springwood on the map?
Being dead wasn't a problem, but being first up, now that's a bitch. I can't come back if nobody remembers me. I can't come back if nobody's afraid.
Though there's plenty of confusion to be had when analyzing the specifics of Freddy Krueger's abilities throughout the franchise, one thing remains constant above it all, and that is that the sheer magnitude of Freddy's diabolical prowess is in direct proportion to the moral panic for which it's ascribed. And with the town of Springwood having successfully expunged every syllable of Freddy Krueger's story from notoriety, the bastard son of 100 maniacs must now resort to something unprecedented, and that is call upon the one man who is in many ways equal to him, and in other ways superior. Oh, the idea of striking back against a community that not only destroyed you, but also made you irrelevant! Well, I can sympathize with that all too well. And in no time at all, Springwood's deepest, darkest secret is out, and the legend lives again. But for all Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger may have in common in the eyes of the viewer, it becomes rapidly apparent that there just ain't enough carnage for the two of them to spread. And what starts off as a one-sided joint venture turns into a knockdown, drag-out free-for-all between the two biggest names of the horror genre, bar none! Forget about your dream matches, forget about your fantasy fights, forget about any two people of whom you have ever debated that the winner in a fight between the two would be. 'Cause ain't no Clash of the Titans will ever surpass Freddy versus Jason. So there you have it. Sound off in the comments. Give me your thoughts. The negative or the positive. Like, dislike, subscribe, unsubscribe. It's all the same to me. This is Venom of Society. Rock out!